Dynamite download. Dynamite download.
Welcome back to Dynamite Download, everybody. The first Dynamite app coming off of the heels of Full Gear. And man, we knew that show was incredible. There's so much we wanted to talk about coming out of Full Gear. We actually had a special show that we had to catch in on after the pay-per-view. That said, it was obvious that Tony Khan and the team at AEW had a lot that they wanted to get off their chest tonight too. They had an action-packed Dynamite that had a whole lot of new things getting started. We had feuds getting continued. We had MJF getting introduced to the Inner Circle. Let's get those Dynamite results up there tonight. There you go, SPD. Thanks for throwing those up for us. Show started out with our guys over at Team Taz cutting, as always, a great promo. But tonight they actually threw those guys out there first, had them start the show. And Brian Cage had another really Matt Sydal coming out again, having a competitive match with an upper card guy. But ultimately, Brian Cage, the Machine, was too much for Matt Sydal, and he put him away. And then the bunkhouse match, which was surprisingly really violent, man. Yeah. My goodness, was that a throwback? And I guess we shouldn't have been surprised knowing Dustin Rhodes and just what a throwback he is. It was actually Dustin Rhodes and his partner QT Marshall coming out on top on that one, putting away the Butcher and the Blade, and leaving the Blade as a bloody heap in the middle of the ring. Shawn Spears defeated Scorpio Sky. That was a matchup we were promised, a couple Dynamites ago before Full Gear. Unfortunately, that had to get pulled due to some COVID-related things that happened between the competitors. But we did get to see the culmination of some week-long feuds going on there between Shawn Spears and Scorpio Sky. And Shawn Spears definitely showing a mean streak that is continuing more and more. You're starting to see that dark side of him coming out. Then Tay Conti, speaking dark side, you got to see the Dark Order. Accompany Tay Conti in her matchup against Red Velvet. Anna Jay was certainly rooting on Tay Conti, and she wanted to influence that match and turn her partner to the dark side, but Conti came out on top without resorting to those antics. And then in the main event of the night, my goodness, the fireworks that happened in the match and then the post-match. I'm sorry. Usually we start from the beginning of the show to the end, and we try to hit it in order. But coming off the heels of that main event, SPD, I don't know about you. I can't talk about anything until we get this off of our chests. You know me. Pac is my favorite wrestler in the whole wide world. To see him come back in this way. You've been calling for this for weeks now, long before Pac's return was ever imminent. What'd you think about how this all played out?
I know. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so. And,
well, I'll drink to that, brother. I'm happy
cheers,
to be put in my place. That is that was phenomenal. You definitely did call this a long time ago.
Yeah, we're going to have to go back into the highlight reel and see where I actually did call that. But it was well before Pac was announced he was breaking his silence. And I could see the booking in the stars. Like, it just made sense. You know, Eddie is hot, and he's got all these guys and his family. And it's kind of throwing out these seeds, throwing out these, hints. And it's a perfect re-debut of Pac. And I think the timing is absolutely perfect. I think this could be, it's more than just a one-on-one feud. You're going to have the family division, as we saw, and you're going to have others involved. And it's a perfect segue with after the match that Eddie lost, which does him no hurt at all. It loses him zero momentum, in my opinion. But it's just, I'm excited. I cannot wait for them to finally go toe-to-toe. It's going to be, the fight for family. I don't know how you exactly book it or what you would call like, the title for their match, but it's going to be it's going to be amazing. And I think Pac's going to obviously have to come out on top and bring back, be the leader of the Death Triangle.
Oh man, and so as a fan of all three of those guys, we never really got a chance to see
I know.
that.
It was just a little tease.
We only had a tease of what that could have been, and for that to be potentially down the road, for Pac to come back and try to bring those two brothers who are now so divided, bring them back together,
right?
And battle Kingston and his family. Man, is that going to make some great television? And that starts next week because we get to see Pac go up against the Blade, which promises to be a great match. I mean, the Blade we saw tonight is no stranger to violence. So that said, we're going to jump in right into the main event because this one really, SPD, before we get into anything else in this show, it's one of those main events that you're going to remember for a long, long time. The Lucha Brothers, anytime that they're in the ring, typically as a tag team, they steal the show. They're always incredibly entertaining. But as we've seen in recent weeks, Eddie Kingston really laid it on thick tonight with Penta being his best friend and him really highlighting how he feels like Penta is the superior of the two brothers. Pitting those two together against each other, we were seeing the writing on the wall where, really a team that was once cohesive. Imagine what those two could be doing if they worked together, right? If they push their energies together to try to go after the tag titles, right? Instead, they're tearing each other apart. And that match, I mean, literally, they were tearing the masks off of each other. It was violent. It was brutal. They fought in a way that only – beautiful visual there, SPD. They fought in a way that only brothers could, and it was incredible.
Very well put.
Your heart starts to break as you see, like, really what they were willing to put each other through. And really that's where Pac comes in, and he could see the breaking up of that family, and he puts his arms around those guys. I cannot wait. A leader delete out of you, SPD. I have a feeling that you and I are both going to be on the same page on this one, right?
Oh, these are, you said it best. I mean, these are two of the best in-ring wrestlers in AEW or the world that I have ever seen. And they put on a hell of a match on their first one. But this second one was even better, if possible, because of the storytelling. You talked about the ripping of the mask. The ripping of the mask, it was very emotionally heavy, and it drew a lot.
Some of that coming off the heels of Phoenix getting hurt and having to give up his match in the tournament, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. The story for this match was so much deeper, right?
I agree. The ripping of the mask, as you spoke, I liked how they took turns ripping each other's masks off. I didn't want them to do a full rip and do a full reveal because that's just part of the history and their look. But what I was a little bummed about was in picture they had this epic chop battle that looked insane, but you couldn't hear it. And I was just watching it and cringing because I know how vicious Penta's chops are, as I've spoke about time after time again.
Yeah, we almost got cheated. We saw a Penta match and we didn't get to hear the chops. It's not fair.
I agree. We did get cheated, but this by far to me is an elite match.
Oh,
as always, I mean, these guys could do no wrong in the ring, and they're continuing to be, deeper and better storytellers. And I've said all along that they're the best tag team in AEW, and I'm not ready for them to split up. So hopefully Pac's return can kind of win them back over and they can be brothers united. But if it's more matches of them against each other, that is all elite across the board for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it would be phenomenal to see the Lucha Brothers team up again. Maybe you have Pac going against Kingston and you have the Lucha Brothers going against the Butcher and the Blade.
Right.
Really, whoever coming out on top, establishing themselves as title contenders. Certainly, I don't know about you, but the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks, that sounds like an awesome match to me. I mean, I can only imagine what those guys could do in the ring together. The creativity of the Young Bucks and just the fluidity of the Lucha Brothers offense. I think that would be incredible. So that would be a great future that I could see ahead of us. I'm with you though, SPD. I don't know how anyone could really critique this match and put it into a negative way. Not only from from a physicality standpoint, obviously the physicality of these two in the ring. Their styles work together so well. Penta obviously being a little bit more of the physical one, the bigger, the stronger of the two brothers. Phoenix, he even had moves tonight where he came close to slipping and things like that. And we've seen other wrestlers fall short. He finds a way, even when his body seems to fail him or the elements seem to fail him. And we knew it rained tonight. He still executes his offense in a way that is just mind-blowing.
I agree.
He's truly a professional in a way that we don't get to see very often on television these days, and what he's able to accomplish. So from the physical aspect of the match, beautiful storytelling. The commentary throughout this match was fantastic. I thought Tony Schiavone, the interaction with Eddie Kingston throughout the match was really smart. And again, I think that Tony has slowly but surely become more of the chorus, pointing out the logic. Even last week when Taz pointed out some really smart points about how Brian Cage and Ricky Starks aren't getting the recognition they deserve. Right. Schiavone was the first to agree. Hey, I can't argue. And I think, again, here tonight, he really highlighted some of the logic of what's going on and seeing, hey, these two brothers were once united and now they're decaying under you, Kingston. He helped play that story along.
Right.
That is what made this match even that much more memorable, was the story. So
I agree.
Kudos to the announce team on that. They really did a great job as far as feeding into the match, feeding into the story. That's something that AEW has done so well, and I have to give them credit for that. We'll talk more about some of these things that they remember, but even like the code, like the Mox versus Omega stipulation, how their first match was unsanctioned, and Omega pointing that out. I mean, they do a very nice job of making sure that their fans, those of us who are paying attention, who watch week in and week out, are rewarded with storytelling that is logical, that's connected, that is fluid, that actually builds off of something. It feels like a story, and that's what I really love. So no doubt about it, an elite from me as well. That said, talking about telling a story, Taz comes out at the beginning of the show, and in a way that very few men can on television, he has a way of drawing in the audience and getting him to see, whether you agree with him or not, whether you might think that he's a little bit bitter or biased or what have you, the man brings logic, and sometimes the truth hurts. And he's pointing out, he's throwing these daggers, man. He's pointing out how Ricky Starks and Brian Cage have continued to be overlooked. And I love this new side of Team Taz. I don't know about you, but I love their attitude. They're just going after it and taking it and making an impact and refusing to be ignored.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it was an outstanding way to start the show. And I am excited to see more of Team Taz, and he makes some very good points. And it's being backed up, week after week. Ricky Starks is awesome on the mic. I mean, overall, that Team Taz should be unstoppable. And the way to start the show, I mean, Taz could suck the air out of the crowd for everyone to listen and then just build it back up full of emotion. And he is just an A+ at that. And I mean, transitioning into the match with Brian Cage and Matt Sydal, that was an excellent opener. That was a very good opener. There was it was fun to watch. I don't think Matt Sydal is a lower card wrestler at all. Unfortunately, he's lost twice on Dynamite, but I think he's got some really good potential. I see some excellent moves in the ring. He's got some good charisma. Some of the key moments was when he did that diving double knee onto the on-ramp. My knees started tingling just watching that.
Yeah.
And Sydal is so fun to watch. And the finisher with the drill claw out of midair, it's a perfect finisher just to show how strong Brian Cage is. And we know he's strong. And it was just an outstanding finisher, very well fought match, very high energy. And I was happy to see Cage back into the ring and on Dynamite, because we've kind of been a little hard on him because he started off kind of with strong and then fizzled out, and then maybe we weren't too big of Cage fans. But I think this is kind of reestablishing him as a true badass, and being with Team Taz is an outstanding pairing, and adding Ricky Starks.
Certainly helped him. Absolutely. Is this an elite or a delete out of you? It sounds like it was an elite, right?
Yeah, this match and overall, including the segment, if I just had to grade the match, it would definitely be an elite.
Yeah.
And the overall segment is a double elite too, both before,
Wow.
during, and after. So it's like a triple elite. The whole
Wow.
thing
I don't even
is
have that many hands. That's phenomenal. I love that. No, that's one of the things I continue to appreciate more and more. This trio that they've put together, between Taz, Ricky Starks, and Brian Cage, they complement each other so well. I really have become more and more impressed by the way that they play off of each other. And I think that it's a great teamwork in the sense that they all complement each other in a way. Obviously, I feel like Ricky Starks is a lot more confident and comfortable on the mic than Brian Cage is.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that's okay, because Brian Cage, there are very few men on earth that are big and strong and fast and powerful as he is. So
True.
he doesn't need to have to always talk. He has other guys that can do that for him. And I love what Taz brings. Not only does he bring the legacy of his career in the ring and outside the ring, the guy, he has had successful podcasts. He's been great on radio performances, great ringside commentator. I always love when Taz is on commentary. I know you and I both agree. He brings a different analysis, a different viewpoint to wrestling that is oftentimes overlooked. So I think that all three of those guys really, really work together. And
Right.
I love seeing them on screen. I love the quick strike offense of a Ricky Starks and the impact nature of Brian Cage. You don't need to see them on TV a whole bunch in order for them to really make an impact. Ricky Starks can hit one spear or have a couple of cheap kicks, and Brian Cage hit one clothesline, and you're feeling the pain because those guys know what they're doing. They bring it quick. So I thought that was really great. One of the things I'm going to comment on too about the match itself, a couple weeks ago, Matt Sydal went up against Eddie Kingston before Full Gear. It was actually last week's Dynamite.
Right.
And I was actually a little torn about that match because I was thinking, man, Kingston struggling to put away Matt Sydal right before his I Quit match. And I was a little, I think I was looking at it kind of negatively. And I definitely was looking at it more through a prism of Eddie Kingston's character. The more we see Matt Sydal on television, the more obvious it is that he's really talented. And
I agree.
Maybe we forgot about how good he was. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He certainly is somebody who can keep up with anybody. The pace of his matches are always entertaining. I think for a casual fan, if you flip on and you see Matt Sydal, you want to see him more. His offense is just that. It's fast. It has that snap, that pop. He executes things. Obviously, his debut in AEW aside, he executes things with some precision and some finesse that you can't get anywhere else. So I've been really impressed by him. I think that the Brian Cage match tonight again was a great pairing, David and Goliath. Anytime you put Cage in a match with somebody like a Matt Sydal, like a Ray Phoenix, you put him in the ring with guys, even a Trent, you put him in the ring with guys like that who have the work rate, who can go and maybe allow him to give those big, powerful strings of offense, but allow to work around a guy like Cage. I think that this was a great example of what Sydal can bring to the ring, and I certainly would like to see more of him going forward. I think this was no doubt an elite from me as well. The whole segment, I continue to be impressed by Team Taz. Cage needed to be reestablished on national television as a legitimate contender. And now we see where he's going, right? And I think it's a great fit for him going into that program with Cody, going after the TNT title. Obviously, we know that Ricky Starks might have his eyes on that prize too.
Right.
But I think that is the right match for Brian Cage. I don't necessarily think that he's ready for the world title at this stage. I think that big picture, you have him going to a feud for the TNT title. You have him and Cody. You have that Darby Allin and Ricky Starks. Obviously, we're playing off the long history between Team Taz and Darby.
All right.
It's a win-win. They're really doing a nice job. Like we talked about, SPD, just blending all these characters together. allowing it to breathe, giving some long-term storytelling. What do you think of the Cody segment, the Cody post-match promo? Because obviously Cody has been very much in, after the match with Darby, losing that TNT title, Team Taz made their impact at Full Gear, and then they did it again tonight at Cody's expense. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought, his promo got cut pretty short, so I was a little confused what was going on at first and who came out, and she lost me for a little while, and I didn't think she was as smooth of a talker. She looks like a beast. I don't know who this person is, actually. They never really officially announced. Can you chime in on who that was?
Jade Garvin.
Okay, but I
agree with
her
cadence, her speech was a little bit. You could tell she doesn't have a ton of experience.
Yeah, a little green
in that regard. The script, the word, like what she had to say, the actual content of what she said, it hit hard.
For sure.
She had some lines that were pretty awesome, and it had me pretty hyped about what the announcement was going to be.
Yeah, I was still kind of confused, like what was going on, but what my favorite part of that whole segment was, believe it or not, was Brandy. This was the best I've seen her on TV or in AEW. She had like chills going down my arms. I was like, oh my gosh, she is going off as she should, because that's her man.
Yep.
She's coming to the rescue, and I wish she would have thrown a couple punches or something, but she said it all with her mouth, and I was like, if I was that other person, I would have been walking away as fast as I could, because it scared me. And she looked awesome, and she was spitting fire, and don't mess with her man.
Yeah, Brandy has at times had a lot of critics, and I think that the more we get an opportunity to see her like this, as sort of like that natural fire, she's got some fire in her, right? And,
yes, please, more of that.
That was phenomenal. What the actual content leading up to it looks like Cody versus Shaq eventually one day, and obviously Cody has claimed the giant slayer of AEW.
Right.
What are your thoughts on a potential matchup between Cody and Shaq? It's a big part. It's a big buzz right now on social media. There was a lot of conversation about who this would be. What are your thoughts?
I think it's great for the company, and it's great for exposure. I mean, if Shaq's going to take it seriously, which you can see he might be training. I don't know if he's training with those Tom's loafers on or what, but he needs to get some wrestling boots. But it would be nice to see him in the ring. I mean, he's gonna be slow, and Cody is one of the best, like I said last week, in the ring performer that I've seen in a long time, if ever. So it'll be good TV. It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be a main event of it. It's not gonna be a Penta and Ray. It's not gonna be a Kenny Hangman. It's not gonna be any of that. But it will be.
It's an attraction.
Yeah, right? and I think it's needed to help draw more fans. So I'm excited for it, and especially if Brandy gets involved like this, it's just going to expand the viewership even more. And so I'm excited to see where this goes. And like I predicted a few weeks ago, or last week on the review, how Brian Cage is going to go, the tag team writing in this, I predicted the tag team match between Cody and Darby, and Cage and Starks. Yep. But real quick, going back to that, I loved Darby's jacket, and I was really rooting for him. I'm gaining steam from him, and I'm like, okay, I can get along with this. He actually kind of.
It didn't take long, did it?
Right.
It didn't take long. No,
right.
It didn't.
I agree.
His character is so intriguing and so different from anything else in current wrestling that.
True.
Whenever he's on screen, he pops, and you want to see him.
Yeah.
So I knew that although we were worried about how he was being booked, he's so young, and he's just such a unique entity that he's gonna be fine. And
right.
that was a great example. That thumbtack jacket, the dive into Brian Cage wearing a jacket with thumbtacks on it, that's freaking insane, and that's way more brutal than anything that we would want to take in real life, right? So I thought that was impressive, and it's an example too, right, where a guy as small as Darby Allin he will launch himself and come up with creative ways to hurt other people. And that was a great example of that. I do think, AEW is always going to have the backbone of the fan base. It's going to have a loyal, loving fan base. People like us, there are so many people interacting with people on social media. There are a lot of fans. Yes, there are a lot of people who they love being negative. People in general love to be negative, man. But there are a lot of great fans and I think that AEW has a very, very, very loyal fan base that has been established. But integrating Shaq in with really their most recognizable star in Cody, and a guy who is a pro's pro, who no matter what will put on a good performance, he will find a way to make us engage as a fan. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he will. And I agree with you, SPD. If Shaq, and this is what I was talking about on Twitter with people tonight, is if Shaq really does take it seriously, and that's a big if. I mean, at this stage of his life, he's older, and he's doing this, I think, as a company man for TNT. There's,
right.
I know he's a wrestling fan, but if he takes this seriously and goes all in on this could be really entertaining, and we could actually get something that could surprise a lot of fans. And
right.
I'm with you. I think at bare minimum, it's going to draw more eyes to the product. Shaq is a brand. Shaq is a well-known commodity for so many people in the target demographic. We all grew up watching Shaq dominate on the court. Now we watch him laughing it up, eating pizza at Papa John's, and doing all sorts of funny gigs on commercials and stuff like that. But
he's a funny guy.
Shaq's naturally charismatic, and he's naturally funny. And I think that we're going to be surprised again how entertaining he is when he's given the opportunity in the ring here. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I do think that, with Cody's character coming off of a title loss like that, it's good for him to kind of have another story that's maybe not title related, to allow Darby to stand on his own. And I thought that went well. Cody made it clear tonight, his eyes are not set on an immediate rematch with Darby. He's right. And I think that that's important, that they allow Darby to breathe a little bit and get his footing as a champion. So
I agree.
Speaking of champions.
Hold on. Look at what I got here.
Hey.
Broken Skull IPA, baby.
I was going to say, SPD, my segue was going to be, speaking of champions, the world heavyweight champion, Jon Moxley. But your segue is way better, because because Jon Moxley is basically the Stone Cold Steve Austin of AEW.
Right.
He's a hell-raising, badass son of a bitch who takes no prisoners, apologizes to nobody, and likes kicking everybody's ass. And I think that that's what Stone Cold could totally get down with that.
We'll raise a cold one to him for sure. And this is an excellent IPA by Stone Cold.
You've been really talking that up lately.
It's good, man. I'll have to bring you some. And I'm here in Arizona, and I was surprised to see it. And so I'm still traveling the world. This is a beer break segue. I had a Dragoon IPA from an Arizona local brewery here, and it is a West Coast IPA with really floral aromas. And I had to, finish it off with the Stone Cold IPA once we started our Dynamite Download podcast.
We're talking
what better time than now?
You're talking wrestling. You got to have a Stone Cold.
Every sip you take, you hear glass shatter. So
that's awesome. So I think that we talking about champions. We're talking about ass kickers, man. Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. I don't know if Kenny would be joining us in the beer break segment. But
we'll raise this
I
for
think
him.
that this is the match that there you go, bud. That's one's for you, Kenny. They had not to get too heavily involved in each promo, but they did have a promo tonight, battle between the two of them, and you just showed that graphic that these two are going to go head to head.
Right.
So really, what did you think about the actual promos? For me, the announcement that these two are going head to head on Dynamite, right? That is like this Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm sorry, like that is not just a main event of a pay-per-view. Like that is the main event of the pay-per-view of all pay-per-view. That is like the greatest of all time type of main event for AEW. That there is no, to me, they're putting all the cards on the table. It doesn't get bigger than that matchup.
Yeah, I'm not going to say what kind of pay-per-view it's going to headline, but it could be the Super Bowl of all pay-per-views headline. But yeah, we're getting this on free TV. I'm not sure I agree with this. So I'm excited for it, of course. Yes, it's going to be happening in less than a month. And so it's just amazing. Free TV. But this should be the headline. They should have really capitalized on that, maybe dragged it out maybe a little bit longer so they could have a headline revolution. But I think this is Kenny's time. I mean, the promo Moxley's was forgettable. You know, it wasn't really that memorable to me. He's done much better. I did like the vibe of Kenny's and how he's like on the phone and people keep saying, when's the cleaner going to be back? And all these quotes that he's so I think his was much better and it made me excited. And hopefully we'll see him again next week so they can just continue to push down and shift into full gear to the title.
Oh, they're
match.
already in full gear, baby. They're already in full gear. So, it's funny. I know you say that Kenny's promo was better. Of course, not with any bias at all. Not as a Kenny Omega fan, right? But we it's hard not to say like his promo was great in the sense that it really showed an intensity to Kenny. He's got a coldness to him that the kind of a calculating side that is interesting. I know he's done the cosplay of Terminator before in some of his past entrances and stuff, but he almost has that robotic, like he's inhuman with how he trains his body and how he approaches stuff. Like he's just, I don't know. There's a disconnect there, and I find that very intriguing about his character. He's mysterious in that way, and I think it's really, really cool. But I loved the logic that came with his promo. In that, yes, Moxley's whole promo basically was how I'm going to be the only man in the world who goes 2-0 against Kenny Omega, basically, and I'm going to show I'm the baddest man on the planet, that type of thing. And I thought the counter from Omega, the counter punch was, as you said, stronger than the actual jab from Moxley.
Right.
The counter punch from Omega basically like, You're 0-0 against me in an actual wrestling match.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of criticism about Moxley to this point has been that his wrestling matches have gotten a little bogged down with outside stuff, so I think that's for the wrestling community that wants to latch on to the anti-Moxley movement, it certainly gave fuel to them. Right.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And I thought also it was really, really cool how he referenced being, this is something, it almost felt like something out of my childhood where he's talking about, John Moxley's the guy on all the magazine covers, that's supposed to be me. That's something that I could see like a Bret Hart or, somebody like that cutting a promo. Just
right.
Those kind of guys. It's just at that feel of it's supposed to be me. I'm going to remind the world that I'm the best. And, I've been on the back burner and I was company man for too long. And I think that this is going to be a feud that we are talking about for quite some time. I think that obviously AEW recognizes they want to push from the Dynamite ratings. They need that bump. And I think giving that match and hyping it's a month away, is going to really be beneficial for the company in that regard. I agree with USPD. This could really be the match of all matches for AEW. This could be the the Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, that kind of match where just a clash of icons. This really has that kind of potential, and we're not overhyping it. These are legitimately two of the best wrestlers in the whole world. Two guys with two very different styles and approaches to life and wrestling. And I think that the fan bases of these two wrestlers are very divided too. And so I think that it's going to really be an interesting build as we get closer and closer to December.
Yeah, I agree, and I cannot wait.
So coming off of that, SPD, we had a match that I couldn't wait for all week. I didn't know what it was all going to be, what it was going to entail. The bunkhouse match between the Natural Nightmares and the Butcher and the Blade. I didn't know what to expect. I knew that it was going to be a throwback. It was going to be an ode to the old school. Anything involving Dustin Rhodes, is going to be an ass-kicking contest. And honestly, that can extend to the Butcher too, the Blade. All these guys are kind of got that old school. I got to say, QT Marshall. I've always he's always been kind of a one of those guys that you kind of laugh a little bit about his inclusion on the main scene. He just doesn't care. He's got the bald spot as big as mine. He doesn't have the look or the polish of some of the bigger name wrestlers, but he held his own in this match. And I think that being paired with Dustin Rhodes has gone a long way. You got two guys that are really old school that approach wrestling in a same mindset. And that works for a team like FTR too, the former tag team champions. No one would confuse Dax or Cash as the same type of athlete as the Lucha Bros, right? But they get it done because they're paddling in the same direction. They approach the matches in the same mindset, the same mentality. And I think that the Natural Nightmares, that pairing, has really brought out a lot of good in QT Marshall. I think that Dustin Rhodes is an unsung hero of this promotion. He is truly a pro, and we're gonna miss him when he's gone. When he retires one day, he's gonna be sorely missed because he's one of those guys that every time you see him in the ring, you know he's gonna give you a show. He's just like his brother. I mean, you could see it. Cody's got the same thing in his blood. He knows how to work a wrestling audience. They just know it. They're so good at it. What do you think of the bunkhouse match? I know, I mean, again, this is back-to-back weeks, SPD, where you had to sit through some serious blood and some serious hardcore wrestling. That's not your thing. What'd you think? I know you gave the last match, the Kingston versus Moxley one in Elite. Does this keep the streak alive? Are you going to become an ECW fanboy soon?
I don't know. It was very interesting. I was tweeting about it during this. I was tweeting during this match. AE Dynamite DL, if you want to follow us on Twitter, or Dynamite Download on Instagram. But first things first, the Butcher and the Blades intro was awesome, in my opinion. I loved it. I loved what they did. I loved the way they look. They look scary to me, and so it was outstanding.
Awesome.
And to piggyback on what you said, I tweeted about it. I said, I love seeing Dustin in the ring. And he had a pretty important role for a while, and then he kind of went radio silent in a way. And then his promo last week was 10 out of 10, full of emotion, full of heart. It was just great. And yes, we will definitely miss him, and I hope there's no end in sight for him. He's just looking better and better in the ring. It was a brutal match, and there was a lot of color, and it was kind of making me queasy a little bit just because of how colorful it was. And it was a little bit chaotic, a lot going on. I like the ode to his father with the cowbell and all that, so that was very great. It was well done. And QT off the ladder, to piggyback like what you said, he looked strong, and that move off the ladder, it was the right finish, it was the right way to end, and it was just a little too brutal for me. As soon as the bell didn't ring yet, and it went full throttle. And so it was definitely entertaining. And, not to sidetrack, but was the red carpet around the ring for that match, or what was that for? Did you notice that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly.
I thought it was going to be for the inner circle, but it was just kind of randomly there.
Well, I mean, it might have been there. They might have had it ready for the inner circle segment because that was there after, right? I mean, that was the segment right after. But it might have been there just to hide all the blood that was.
Oh, yeah.
Because so this is an elite out of you, even though
I'm giving it an elite. Yeah,
all right.
I will. Just because, like I said, the Natural Nightmares put on a show. I like the Butcher and the Blade, and I like seeing these guys on TV so it's nice to see them all back. Just a little too colorful, but overall it was entertaining. It was different. Even though it was a little scattered, I still give it elite.
Man, we're feeling good about AEW right now. I feel like this company is it's going in the right direction. They know how to deliver, and I think that they really are tapped into what the fan base wants to see. At least they must be listening to what we're talking about. I'm elite, man. I love this. I feel like they're booking stuff that I would be booking. I'm excited for the MJF and Wardlow joining the Inner Circle. All this stuff that is happening that I'm just geeking out about, my personal wish list of things that have happened. So this is one of those things where I agree. I think the Butcher and the Blade, their whole look has changed dramatically getting the bunny back.
Right.
It adds to that persona. You can tell it gives confidence to the team and makes them more polished looking and presentation. The match itself, I grew up as one of those kids that, like, my parents, I watched WWF, whatever, and WCW, but as I became a teenager and I kind of rebelled a little bit, I would sneak and watch some ECW and things like that when I shouldn't have. And I liked ECW, and that's what really, that kind of helped make me aware of wrestling outside of the mainstream. And so this match made me feel like I was watching some old school Dudleys or Tommy Dreamer or Raven. This made me feel like I was watching like some old school gangsters. It was violent. They were just beating the hell out of each other with whatever they could find.
I mean, look at these guys. Look like they were in a backyard brawl.
And that's not even showing the Blade.
I'm not going to show that though.
Blade was literally left in the middle of the ring, just covered in blood. It was a really brutal match. And what was nice about it too, to me, I know it got a little chaotic, but some of the actual utilization of the weapons, the utilization of the environment that was around them, they had some really smart executions of moves. Like, I was impressed by how they interacted with the environment. You didn't see a bunch of like just kind of garbage getting thrown around. These guys were pros. The more I see of the Butcher and the Blade, the more I recognize what Zepp always saw in those guys, and I see how talented they are. I personally think that this pairing was a great combination because you could see Dustin Rhodes and the Butcher. They were just going hoss fest. They were just throwing blows at each other because they just knew that each one could take it. It was a phenomenal match in the sense that it was so different than what we see from like a Cage versus Seidel earlier in the night. It stood out in a good way. And it was an example of AEW recognizing that they could cater to multiple different audiences. Certainly, it makes me wonder, is this the end of that feud or not? It was a bloody send-off. They certainly would be. I think it would be a good idea maybe to move on from this.
I agree. They should move on from that.
It was a very definitive send-off. It was bloody. It was brutal. And I think that Butcher and the Blade can kind of head into another direction with what we talked about with the Death Triangle and Kingston's family. So that's something that I was intrigued by. The thing that I thought going into the match and going into this week's show that all of us would be buzzing about was not Pac. It was not the Penta versus Ray Phoenix. It was the induction of MJF and Wardlow into the Inner Circle. And it lived up to everything that I had hoped for. I thought that these guys, again, they executed what they do best, and that's find a way to make entertaining, comical, just easy to watch television. They're just naturals together. Even when you feel like a segment is starting to get like weird or kind of go off the rails, even when Jericho kind of flubs a line, they all roll with it together. They all laugh. They have a way of making it feel very natural. And they're going to Vegas next week. So we're in for a ride. We're only 1 week into MJF and Wardlow being into the Inner Circle, and we're going to Vegas. It's going to be a hell of a party. I can't wait to see what's in store for us next week.
This picture says it all.
I didn't see the pictures of – I didn't see this picture. I like how Wardlow and Hager are still giving each other the side eye, the side eye to each other. And Ortiz and Sammy couldn't look more bummed out. This is truly – that's an awesome picture right there.
This is a picture of many different stories. And, I tweeted it before the segment, and I was, going out on a limb with my bold predictions that this is where the Inner Circle turned on Jericho. And just the way they approached the ring, I thought it was going to happen. And I think it still will happen, and I'm making that prediction again, that the Inner Circle will turn on Jericho eventually, because it's just the crowd is popping for Jericho. They want him to be this babyface, fan
I don't know,
favorite.
man. If you follow him on Twitter, you get a lot of people are hating him for reasons outside of wrestling.
This whole mesh of everyone. And, at first they weren't saying and Wardlow like last week when it was a stipulation. Now they're adding Wardlow to it. So it's a 2-for-1. I think that my prediction for what's going to happen is Jericho does get turned on by the Inner Circle. Wardlow does turn on MJF, and some kind of more feuds happen through there. I don't really know. I have to think it through a little bit more. But the overall segment, honestly, it kind of fell flat for me because I expected more. It was just essentially a promo with a podium. And, these guys are gold and outstanding on the mic and in the ring. Their story they told on Full Gear was great. And MJF, again, just proving time and time again how ahead of this time he is. And he even said it like, the stuff he said was so comical, but just the ending was just kind of stale and just like going to Vegas. I'm sure it's going to turn out great. The segment will turn out great, but just
you and I aren't big.
We're going to Vegas.
You and I aren't big Vegas guys, right? So we're not gamblers and stuff like that. But if we had the money that MJF has, that maybe it would be a little different experience. But
I mean, I was just in Vegas 2 nights ago and riding down the strip, and it was definitely not my scene. But what MJF and Jericho is going to do, it'll be very interesting. So
it will. I think that unfortunately, and I've noticed this trend. Your expectations for MJF and Jericho segments on their own is really high. I think it's like when they come together, you're expecting like the best surf and turf meal of your life every single time. And I know you're a good eater, but maybe this is like a case of you having like your 7th or 8th plate of surf and turf, and it's just not as good as the first time these two guys got together. Maybe the whole thing of diminishing returns comes into play here.
Vegas,
what a
baby.
Sweet picture. Maybe the whole thing of diminishing returns comes into play here, where it's like you've seen them you've seen them interact, and the sort of the novelty of these two being on screen together,
right,
has made you kind of not pop just for seeing that, and now you want more. And I understand.
I do want more, yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I understand
right. That's
that.
for sure.
You're not going to get the debonair dinner every week. You're not going to get that, right? Next week we're going to have this over the top crazy thing out of Vegas, and I'm sure that some people will think that it's ridiculous and corny, and then others will think it's great.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that they continue to progress the story along.
Okay.
I think that they do a nice job, again, even with something little like Sammy, MJF and Sammy, they're kind of ongoing jabs at each other, and how MJF is slowly kind of elbowing Sammy out of the picture. They do some things here that continue to further the motivations of each of the characters in the Inner Circle. You see Ortiz maybe slowly starting to come around. He's, Santana certainly is on board now after getting the free trip to Vegas. So you're starting to see some of these things coming into play, and it makes me interested to see what's going to happen. Is MJF going to end up kind of manipulating himself into control of the most dominant and elite group in AEW?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's what SPD thinks.
Yeah.
What ends up happening, right? What ends up happening to Jericho if that happens? Do they outsmart MJF, and do they catch him trying to do this? And who knows what's going to happen here? Does Wardlow end up selling out MJF at some point? It's definitely interesting. I want to see that slow played. I'd love to see MJF and Wardlow actually work well with the Inner Circle for a little while.
That would be fun.
And slowly build their trust, right? Slowly win them over and actually achieve some great things, and then have something, happen where it blows up, because I find it entertaining. I think that these guys are great. They're naturals on the mic, and the more that we get to see this, the more we get to see characters that I don't think there's only so much screen time to go around, but we want to see more Wardlow.
Right.
I love Santana and Ortiz, and the more we get to see those guys on television, the better. So.
Yeah, and I'm curious if they're going to be accepting applications, because I wore my Inner Circle tonight.
I know you're repping that shirt. I love that.
I love this shirt, so I would love to join it.
I think they might be kicking you to go hang out with Peter Avalon. But speaking of guys who have been hanging out with Peter Avalon a lot, we got Sean Spears and Scorpio Sky, who have spent most of their time on Dark with Peter Avalon and Brandon Cutler and the crew. But we finally got to see this match on Dynamite. This was promised to us before Full Gear. These two have had a slow building feud that really focuses in on Sean Spears feeling like Scorpio Sky has taken his spot. Sean Spears
Right.
feeling like Scorpio Sky, and he and Scorpio Sky are basically fighting over really the truth. They're fighting over very limited TV time. They're fighting over the very like a spot in the rankings. Sean Spears is taking this all seriously, and I think that Tully has since Sean Spears was caught with underwear with Tully's face on it.
That was brutal.
Tully has since then reminded Sean Spears of what he's capable of, what a bad dude he is, how well he's trained, and how far he's come, and has lit a fire under Spears and reminded him, hey, you better start taking this seriously, or else in a couple years you're gonna wonder what happened to your career,
Right.
and it's gonna pass you by, and you're gonna wonder what if. And I think that Tully's mentorship in that regard has really given Sean Spears a new motivation, and it's good to see the chairman back. I remember seeing him at All Out against Cody, and I felt like, man, these guys know what they're doing with Spears. They've packaged him in a way. His character has some serious star power, and I think that he has a look. He has a moveset in the ring. He's got the natural charisma, and he knows how to get a crowd over, right? So it was really nice to see Sean Spears go up against Scorpio Sky. I know that Tony Khan is very high on Scorpio Sky, views Scorpio Sky as a potential single superstar down the road, and a difference maker for the company, and somebody who could really represent as a person of color, especially in AEW, who really, if we think about their title scene, hasn't really been characterized by that to this point.
Right.
I know that AEW is very focused on inclusivity. So that would be something that I think is interesting in a different dynamic that Scorpio does have going in his favor, not to focus just on that. He's an insanely talented athlete, and he's truly our favorite out of SCU. We think that we've been talking about it for a long time. It's good for him to distance himself a little bit from those guys. He's just young. He's got, I think, being associated with guys who are be a little bit more past their prime. It's good for him to have a little bit of a break. And we got to see him go head to head with Sean Spears tonight. What do you think about that?
I thought the match was great. I was really really excited for this when it first got announced a few weeks ago. I completely agree with the announcers that we would love to see more of them on TV. You know, they're putting them over and saying how we would love to see both these guys on TV. And I completely agree. These are two extremely talented in-ring performers. And it doesn't matter, you know, Scorpio Sky being black, white, whatever. He is an awesome look. He's an awesome in the ring. He is deserved of a push. And I could definitely
see
him
those guys
as a
to me.
future
He's
champion.
a lot like Trent.
Yeah.
And every time I watch Trent in the ring, whether it's a tag match or singles competition, I'm always taken aback by, man, this guy is like just very smooth. He can work with anybody.
Yes. And he's very likable.
Scorpio's got the same thing. He's got a great look. He's very fluid. And I feel like he can have a great match with – you could throw him in the ring with anybody, and he'll have a good match, right?
Marco Stunt?
Yeah. Hopefully we don't get to see Marco Stunt on TV anytime soon.
But overall, I mean, you know, Spears on 11 match win streak. I love the cheating, you know, true heel tactics. You know, the pairing with Tully has been great. It hasn't really been, you know, showcased on Dynamite that much, but the true heel victory is a smart move. And I don't know where you go from here. I don't think this gets, you know, any much further. It might be a little lazy booking if you do kind of extend it more. I don't know, but I would love to see more of these guys on TV. The match itself, I really enjoyed. And for that, you know, it's another elite from SPD, you know, believe it or not.
I can't blame you. It's an elite for me too. I think that we're both on the same page. And I think for me, it boils down to this. You get to see Dynamite is only 2 hours a week. And unfortunately, we don't get a chance to see a lot of these guys who we know are incredibly talented performers. We don't get to see them on television every week. And yes, there is something to be said for AEW Dark. I get that. Right. But most of those matches are booked very one-sided, where we get to see an AEW established veteran against somebody we've never seen or heard of before. And for me, it was great to see two guys who are underappreciated, who don't get a lot of TV time, go up against each other, have a competitive match, really showcase what they're capable of.
Right.
They played to, like you talked about. I thought that Spears did a great job being the natural heel in this match. Scorpio
Yep.
Sky has got that his offense naturally, like an AJ Styles. Even though AJ is a bad guy and all that stuff, you naturally want to cheer for that kind of guy just
Right.
because of their offense is just so compelling. It's exciting to watch a guy like Scorpio Sky. So for me, I think
agree.
it's
Yeah.
important that we got to see that and they got a little more exposure. And there wasn't a lot of shenanigans involving other people that distracted from these two competitors, right? You didn't get this. You didn't see SCU running out. You didn't see any of that other stuff that we see in a lot of different AEW segments that we like, where you get to see all these different characters bleeding into each other. This was actually a really nice break away from that, a breath from all of that, and a focal point and a focus on two guys that don't get that enough. And I thought it was a really great job by the company, giving them a great spot on the card. And I think that they delivered. So it's an elite from me. I think it was definitely a great match. So SPD, I got to say, we're trending for an all elite show on AEW Dynamite Download. We have one match to go. It's Tay Conti versus Red Velvet. Do we have a clean sweep? The first ever all elite Dynamite Download. Do we have it?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but it's a hard delete for me. You cannot call this an elite. Come on. Okay, so not to be overly critical, and like I've said before, I'm waiting to be blown away by the women's division. Blown away by the women's division. But this match did have some good. It was better than the women's division matches I've seen in the past. I'm glad to see Tay.
Was it?
It was better. It wasn't good. I think she has some good potential. It just seemed like they were just going through the moves just to kind of kill time on the card. So it really didn't do much for me. There wasn't that much storytelling, except the minor little thing between Anna Jay and her. And then once again, just the picture-in-picture, can either suck the air out of the match, or it can keep you waiting and watching a soundless picture. So it's a hard delete for me, with no true story to it, and it just seemed too choreographed. What do you think? You cannot tell me this is an elite.
No, I mean, as much as I'd like to be the contrarian, I can't in good conscience give this an elite. I will say Tay Conti and Anna Jay are a nice pairing.
Yes.
I think that that's a good duo, and I think that their natural play of good and evil that those two have going on, where Anna's kind of trying to tempt Tay into joining the dark side. That's interesting. But
you're lost for words.
Red Velvet going into the match at 2-11, it doesn't give you a lot of intrigue going for the match, and I know that what they're trying to do with having her paired up with Brandy. Maybe this leads to, I know Anna Jay and Brandy have had a long-standing feud going on. I don't know where this goes. I didn't really understand where it was placed on the card. I didn't understand.
Right.
It sucks because I feel like AEW's in a bad spot with the women's division.
Right.
The show has gotten so, now we're over a year in, and the show's gotten so well developed. All the divisions are so well developed, except for the women's division. It's like the women's division has fallen so far behind the rest of the other divisions that it's really a tough problem to solve right now, given that they only have such a limited time on television and they have a very limited roster.
I don't know why they aren't just getting the core women over. You're talking Britt Baker, Nyla Rose, Sheeta, like just feature them every week, and just as long as you develop the interest in the division, it'll grow naturally. and you're just randomly placing these random matches throughout. Obviously, like Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb, like take 5 or 6 and just constantly cycle them through just to develop buzz. You're doing these other random one-off stuff is doing you no good.
And I will say, I mean, from a really vocal women's wrestling critic, I think that you nailed what the problem is. And I think that, honestly, I think that you gave AEW some really good feedback there. If they hear you on that, I think that what they need to do, you said it. At this stage, and this is what I was trying to emphasize, and you said it in more succinctly than me, but at this stage, the women's division has fallen so far behind that we don't know who is the backbone. We don't know who the stars are. We don't have that following, right? You got to remember for a long period of time at the beginning of this company, Riho was the focal point, and we poured a lot of attention into trying to build her up.
Where is she?
And she's gone. And I understand that AEW is in, a tough spot when it comes to like Thunder Rosa, who, big fan of as far as her ability in the ring. She's awesome on social media, incredibly great to her fans. She seems like an easy person to root for. She has a presentation that is second to none, right? Thunder Rosa is awesome, right? But she's part-time. We don't know what her status is with the company. Serena Deeb, she's an NWA superstar, the NWA Women's Champion. She's focused on your show more often than Nyla Rose has recently.
Right.
Serena Deeb is somebody who, again, we feel like you could put her out there and she could have great matches every week. Is she going to develop into a star? We don't know, but she's certainly not going to do that if you only show her once every couple weeks. And for me, I understand that you have to diversify the division.
For sure.
But there comes a point when you recognize who your bankable stars are, and you need to establish them first.
Yes.
And then you'll start to care about who cares if somebody beats Anna Jay if Anna Jay isn't established as an important character, right?
True.
Pick a few characters in your women's division and focus them regularly and build them up. Britt Baker, without question, would be a choice. Nyla Rose, without question, would be a choice for different reasons. Each of them brings something different to the table. Sheeta has proven as champion that she deserves a spot at the table, right? If you have a contract situation with Thunder Rosa, great. Anna Jay is somebody who we'd like to see more of on television. She certainly has a character that has some interest to her. Her involvement with the Dark Order would instantaneously give fans something to latch onto. Abaddon, I know she had a recent injury, but that is a character that is interesting and unique. You want to hear more about.
Buzz.
Pick a few and build on them,
right?
And then go worry about filling in the cracks later on. But if you don't have the right foundation set, you're never going to get your feet off the ground.
That's perfectly said.
I'm with you. I think you said it really well.
The women's division was more exciting when Britt Baker was sitting there in her wheelchair and Big Swole was antagonizing her. That was more exciting than the matches that they've been putting on. And honestly, it created more buzz. And so I agree with that. And it's really surprising that the Sheeta was not featured after retaining this title by an ex-champ. Like, you're not even shown on Dynamite. Like, that was a huge miss in my opinion.
That's a big, SPD, you're coming.
I gotta say, I'm a hard critic on the women's division.
You and the women, no, dude, this is all good feedback, though.
Right?
I mean, that's something I didn't even think about, right? You have Jon Moxley on the show. You have Eddie Kingston on the show. You have Kenny Omega. You have all these guys who came off of big matches yesterday. Everybody. You had Cage. You had Cody. You had Allen. You had all these characters that came off of that show. Now, yes, you didn't see the Young Bucks, but
we saw him briefly in the backstage, but you didn't get they didn't even show a package of her. They should have shown a package.
Nothing about their women's champion defeating Nyla Rose.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It doesn't make sense. You're right. And where's that building of Sheeta's star, right? You've clearly invested in her as far as her win-loss record.
Yep.
Her reign as champion. She's beat Thunder Rosa. She's beat Nyla Rose. You clearly have established that you're behind her.
Right.
But then there's no follow-up at all on the next show. coming off that pay-per-view. It would have been great to hear from our women's champion. It would have been great to see her, right? So
it doesn't have to be much, but just something.
I think that you nailed your assessment of the women's division. I think that the division would only get better if they listened to SPD more. I'm
hoping. Being a tough critic, I'm hoping for the best. I'm not anti it. I just want the best that they can deliver. You
have high standards.
And speaking of the best, we got the best of the night. I'll try to take your transition for you.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, you go out there, SPD. Tear it up.
Well, my top performer of the night was Penta El Zero M because of just his in-ring storytelling and ability. I think Rey Fénix is a little bit better in the ring overall, but just Penta's chops, Penta first, digging deep, the dark side, ripping the mask and like the biting of the mask. And like his storytelling is really, really unique and powerful.
The pile driver on the apron, dude.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I loved how Eddie was like, yeah, pile drivers scare me. That is just brutal. Eddie's like,
I've been pounding my fist and typing it up every week. Penta his offense is one of the most brutal offenses to watch. His matches are brutal. They might not always be the most fancy. They might not always be 5-star matches or whatever, but his offense is brutal to watch, and I would not want to get in a fight with him. That's all I want to say. I agree. I think that match tonight, the whole performance, I can understand why Penta would be your top performer.
Yeah, and for you, man,
I was torn up on a lot of different ways I could go.
It's a good choice.
As a Pac fanboy, I could have picked him. I thought that his debut tonight was really what a lot of people are going to be buzzing about. I agree with you. I thought that Penta was phenomenal. That match between him and Fénix was incredible as always. But for me, I picked the Natural Nightmares because I really don't know when I'm going to be able to name them as the top performers of the night on a Dynamite again. And in the spirit of what we talked about in a lot of different instances tonight, coming off the women's segment, coming off the Shawn Spears and Scorpio Sky segment, it was really nice for me to see some guys who don't get a lot of regular television time.
Right.
In a match like this, they get featured in segments and things like that as back, kind of people on the side. But to have these two teams go at it in such a brutal match. Oh. And for the storytelling that went on through that match, what those guys were willing to put themselves through, I was incredibly impressed. I came away.
I agree with you.
There's so I love the tag team division in AEW. I think that the tag division for me is the most exciting division in all of wrestling. For AEW's tag division is second to none. And there are so many teams that I want to see get a run at it. The Natural Nightmares were never in that conversation in my mind, right? I always went to a few different teams in my head, but after a match like that, I gained a lot of respect. I've always loved Dustin Rhodes, and I've always recognized what a pro he is. But that team, they came out tonight, man, and they
put themselves on the map. They put themselves back on the map. I agree.
And I think, it put them on the map. I think for me, when I'm thinking about tag title contenders and I'm thinking about teams that I'd like to see get a shot, after a match like tonight, I would be totally good seeing the Natural Nightmares go up against the Young Bucks, and I think that could be a great just battle of styles, right?
Yeah,
old school again. That's what I loved about FTR against the Young Bucks. Old school versus new school, and there's nobody more old school than Dustin Rhodes. So I don't know. I thought that they killed it tonight. I was really impressed. So that said, man, we had so much stuff tonight that came out of nowhere and just blew our minds, and it was a great show. But next week's show has some matches that I think more than anything are going to be intriguing as far as the dynamics of building the storylines moving forward. We do get a chance to see Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin teaming up fresh off their matchup against each other, in which Cody lost his title to Darby. We get to see those two team up against Team Taz, and we know that Team Taz has had it in for Darby for quite some time. This matchup's going to definitely be interesting. I have a feeling we might see Will Hobbs again.
I hope so.
I think that could be really interesting. The Young Bucks against Top Flight. I don't know much about Top Flight.
Me
I've
either.
heard some buzz online about them that we might be in store for something great though.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and watch. They said they're on Dark, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. I missed Dark this week, sadly. But anytime the Young Bucks are in the ring, it's fun to watch. So
These guys are the Young Bucks are legitimately
brothers versus brothers.
That's awesome.
I like it.
That's awesome. You know that they're gonna bring it then.
Yes.
So we have that, and then we're gonna, and I think that's gonna be a fast-paced matchup based off
that'll be
of
fun.
The Young Bucks style and things like that. And then we're gonna see Kip Sabian versus Orange Cassidy, which again I think should be a fast-paced match. I think that it could be really interesting with those two in the ring together. I wonder how that's gonna go, because quite often when we see Orange Cassidy in the ring, he's always the underdog.
Right.
He's always kind of forced into a position where he's the small guy, and he's not going to be in that position this upcoming week. So I think it'll be really interesting to see Kip Sabian versus Orange Cassidy and how that dynamic plays in the ring. I think that could be a secret, like kind of sneaky, kind of good match in that one. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I like the pairing for sure. I'm just confused a little bit. I think it should have been Kip versus, if they want to do the feud, Chucky T. So like, how come Chucky T is in the back burner when essentially it was like, Chucky T and Trent, the best friends, and Kip and Miro feuding. All of a sudden, Orange Cassidy gets thrown into the mix of this. So I like the pairing much better. It'll be a better match overall versus if it was Chuck T. So I'm just kind of intrigued where this is going to go. Sadly, this type of feud and is mid-card level at best, but it'll be fun to watch.
There's a place for everything, and yeah. I actually I've started to come around to this feud basically being built around video games and making fun of each other's moms. I think that like there's something to be said about just kind of like, it seems very childish. And in a sport where everybody's yelling at each other and wants to rip each other's head off and put barbed wire around your neck and choke you out and stuff, it's actually kind of funny and much needed levity to have. And I've kind of come around to that feud. I was definitely very bitter about it as a Miro fan, but
right.
I'm starting to come around to where, its place on the show. It adds a little bit of humor
for sure,
and lightness. And I think that there's going to be a lot of humor that comes out of the Inner Circle versus the Las Vegas. Inner Circle versus Las Vegas. I have a feeling they're going to be going to battle with that town. MJF is going to definitely spare no expense for Jericho. I have a feeling there'll be lots of bottles of bubbly. A little bit of the bubbly. And I can't wait to see what ends up happening. I would love to. I would love to be a part of that creative process, just to hear all the ideas that these guys have. I can only imagine. And then in the match of all matches, I finally get to see my man Pac coming back. He's going to go up against the Blade, which, hey, man, we saw again tonight. The Blade is a beast in the ring. That dude is physically shredded. He can go, and he knows how to dish out some offense. So he and Pac, there's no doubt those two are going to be beating the hell out of each other.
Oh, for sure.
And I cannot wait to fight. I mean, it's been months since we've seen the Bastard in action. So
it's going to be great.
There's no doubt you guys are going to want to be tuned in to next week's Dynamite. It's going to be so great. You're finally going to see the return of the Bastard. You're going to see the Inner Circle go all out in Las Vegas and party like rock stars. It's going to be a phenomenal show. You're going to see Cody and Darby Allin go up against Brian Cage and Ricky Starks. It's going to be a phenomenal show, guys. Make sure you tune in next week, and make sure that you follow us. Subscribe now on YouTube. We really love seeing all those views come through. It always gives us a little bit more motivation for next week. As always, follow us on social media. We enjoy kind of the interaction with you guys and becoming more and more ingrained in the AEW universe online. You guys are an awesome fan base. Keep up the positivity. Let's keep loving on this company. Let's keep seeing grow. We're only a year in, guys. I have a feeling it's only going to be better from here. So until next week, I can't wait to talk about it with you again, SPD.
Yes, I can't wait.
Have a good night, guys.
Cheers.